Those stories and more coming up next on Eyewitness News.
SeaWorld of San Antonio has another shipment of marine animals in tonight.
Deborah Knapp.
This is Eyewitness News at 4.
Good afternoon, I'm Deborah Knapp.
You're watching KENS 5 Eyewitness News at 4:30 with Deborah Knapp.
They're expected to meet with the president this afternoon in an effort to reach an agreement on
For decades, Deborah Knapp has been a fixture in San Antonio, delivering some of the most memorable news stories our city has ever seen. From the Fiesta sniper shooting in 1979, Pope John Paul II's visit in 1987, the closing of Kelly Air Force Base in 1995, to numerous San Antonio Spurs titles, Deborah has been a trusted face in our journalistic landscape. And now, after 48 years in broadcasting, Deborah is hanging up her microphone for the last time. Deborah, thank you so much for taking the time to talk with me. I really appreciate it.
Oh, I'm honored. I'm honored. Christopher, thank you.
Can we just start, a little bit about where you're from originally, a little bit about your parents and what they did?
Well, I grew up in a military family. My parents are from Iowa, but I was born in Japan. My dad was stationed there. And then we lived in California, and then Ohio, and then Michigan, and back to Ohio, and then my father went to Vietnam. And when he got back, he had a choice of Washington, D.C., where he could have advanced his career, or San Antonio. And my mother said, I was one of 4 children. She said, no, I don't want to live in Washington, D.C. and raise our children there. So we came to San Antonio, and what a blessing that has been. And he was stationed at Brooks, and he retired here.
Okay, so what year was that when you all moved to San Antonio?
In 1969.
Okay, and at that point you're...
I was in 8th grade, went to Garner Middle School.
What were your career aspirations at that point?
At that point, I think I wanted to be a flight attendant when I was in middle school. I think that was my goal. I wanted to travel, and then I went to MacArthur High School, and I had a wonderful English teacher, Deborah Long Shirley, that I reconnected with about 20 years ago, and we're dear friends. And she really encouraged my writing and helped me. And then I took a fabulous journalism course when I was 14, and the journalism teacher was terrific. And it just really sparked that desire in me. I loved learning new things every day. I liked writing, meeting people, interviewing people. And so from the time I was 14, that's what I wanted to do.
And at that age, were there, local broadcasters here that you admired or wanted to emulate?
Well, I wasn't interested in broadcast at that time because this was in the 70s. And when I went to college, it was Woodward and Bernstein, and I thought, oh, I'd love to be an investigative reporter. I want to be a newspaper reporter. And so I worked on the paper all through college, the Daily Texan, and I did an internship. I interviewed with the Corpus Christi Caller-Times, and the newsroom was just filled with men, and they were all smoking. And they said, now, you're going to start off writing obituaries. And after a few years, then you can move to this. And I thought, well, I don't mind starting, whatever I have to do. But I just thought there didn't seem to be a great future there. And so my graduating semester, my mother and best friend had said, take a broadcasting course. And so I was the only graduating senior in the class, but I loved it. That was just it. And I liked putting pictures and sound with the story. And, I started interning at KSAT and got a job out of college there.
Do you happen to recall your first honor story at KSAT that you did?
Let's see, my very first. Well, I actually was hired as a weekend weather girl. Oh, okay. So I had been coming down there, and they. And at that time, we had big black markers to put the temperatures on the board. But I wanted to be a reporter, and so I signed up for a graduate course at UTSA, and so I interned Monday through Friday, and then worked in the newsroom, and then I did the weekend weather, where I got paid $25 a show. And I was hired in August, and I know one of my very first stories, the first week or so, when Elvis Presley died. And we went to the record stores, and they were all sold out of Elvis. But I remember the very first story I went on as an intern, and we were out on Lake McQueeney in a boat, and we were doing a story about all the weeds in the lake. And I just thought, oh my gosh, I could have a job where I get to go out on a boat as part of my job, and I get to meet all these people. I just vividly remember that feeling for the very first story that I went on. And it has been like that.
It may come down to this, whether park owners can act as utilities, buying electricity, distributing it, and making a profit at it. The answer to that question could mean a difference of hundreds of dollars to the people who live in these mobile homes. One of the delegates was Georgia Governor Jimmy Carter. So most of these governors know the president personally. Some people say that religion has become too commercial, that the spiritual meaning of the church has been lost by focusing on gimmicks and entertainment to bring people to church. Others say that advertising is a form of ministry, spreading the word like the gospel, using today's form of communication. Deborah Knapp, Channel 12, Newswatch. 2 people were killed late this afternoon on the city's south side.
Last night's police shooting meant some very intense moments for everyone involved. The game plan for the Alamo Dome is getting clearer. Tonight, the ball is in the hands of the city council members. They will approve or reject a contract that calls for private and public financing of the stadium complex. More than 2,000 surgical procedures qualify for same-day surgery, from cataract removal to hernia repair.
All right, Joe, thanks. And Eyewitness News is there as a stolen car ring is busted. We'll have that and more for you in 30 minutes on Eyewitness News at 6. And I'm Deborah Knapp O'Neill. Bob Salter's on vacation this week. It looked like something out of the Old West, a shootout in the middle of downtown San Antonio at high noon. Well, sometimes it's hard to believe, but our station has been on the air for 50 years. Duncan will remain a Spur, and while we don't know until August 1st just how many years he'll stay in San Antonio, the whole city is just thankful he is staying. Welcome back. Continued growth on the north side in 2008 led to the need for more schools. A shootout inside a vape shop early this morning has left one man in the hospital as police search for the suspect. I've been in operating rooms, been at the White House, the governor's mansion, but also interviewing people who live in boxes on the street. Just to have that kind of experience, that breadth of experience I never would have had without this career.
As a woman starting out in the late 70s, I assume it was a more male-run organization at that point. Did you feel any resentment as a woman trying to come into the broadcast industry at that point?
I never thought about it. There's a picture that we have at the station that was taken in 1979, I think. And it was all the anchor teams. There were about 8 or 9 of us. And somebody said a couple years ago, "You're the only woman." And I had never even realized that looking at the picture. And so there weren't very many of us. And when I would be out on live reports and I'd be at shootings and fires, and sometimes I get calls from people, I don't like seeing a woman out there at a scene like that. But things were changing during that time. And even when I went to Philadelphia, which is the 4th largest market in the country, in 1980, and there were very few women in the newsroom even then. Now we have more women than men. Just like at universities, you have more women than men. But I think I just nose to the grindstone, just worked, and I was fortunate to work with people that treated everybody equally.
Were there, when you're starting on a case, were there reporters or anchors that had been there like a long time that kind of helped you?
Yes. Don Colson was the main anchor at KSAT when I started, and he would go into the edit bay with me and the audio booth and help me with my delivery. And he said, Deborah, you don't say, here, I want milk, eggs, bread. That's not how you make a list. That's not how you deliver this. You don't go up at the end of sentences. And then I had another mentor there who told me, don't put a word on paper without a picture in mind. Because I said, I'll write my story and think about the pictures later. He goes, no, that's not how you write for broadcast. That's newspaper. You don't write a word without, what is my video? And so they helped me tremendously. And Chris Maru and Fred Lozano, when I went to KENS 1 year after I went there my 2nd year, and they both were so helpful. And even Chris Maru, and up into the 2000s, he's like, if you don't know how to say something, ask me. I went, okay.
And I was about to lead into that. You weren't long in KSAT before Bob Rogers, snatched you away to KENS. What was he like as a news director, and what was those early days like at KENS for you?
Oh, he was wonderful. He was such a great news director. He went out in the field with me and helped me. He worked with me, called me in. He was no nonsense. He just hired talented people and let us do our jobs. We had so much freedom to innovate then, and we went through a long period where everything was formulated. I think these last 5 years in television, maybe 10 years, social media, suddenly we have that creativity again. People are trying new things. And when I got in the business, we were all trying new things. I mean, live shots were new. We could try new ways to do them, new places to go live from. And Bob just encouraged that innovation. And he put together a great news team. We were #1 for 25 years. It was just phenomenal.
Were you there, or were you in Philadelphia when they moved into the building?
I was in Philadelphia when they made that move. But, Chris Maru and Fred Lozano, I mean, I just worked with terrific people there.
Mm-hmm. Can you mention a little about, because I know Bob Salter, Fred, Dan Cook, all have since passed, but what do you remember most about them?
Well, Fred Lozano was just a marvelous journalist, and one of the best writers I've ever known, and he had a quiet sense of humor, and I loved working with him, and he was my first co-anchor.
10 years and $186 million after it was proposed, the Alamo Dome is opening up to the residents of San Antonio and South Texas.
Tomorrow, thousands will be heading downtown for a look at what many call the dome that Henry built. Good evening, I'm Fred Lozano.
And I'm Deborah Knapp. The Alamo Dome's grand opening is now just a little over 14 hours away.
Dan Cook was a riot. I mean, you never knew, excuse me, what was going to come out of his mouth. He was just totally uncensored. And he gave me good advice too, but he was so fun to work with.
This is Eyewitness News at 4:30.
Good afternoon. Along with Deborah Knapp, I'm Bob Salter. Testimony has turned from emotion to science.
And Bob Salter, I worked with Bob in the 90s when he came over. He wasn't there when I was there in the 70s, but I came back in 87, and then we hired Bob, I want to say like 95, maybe, 96, and he was my co-anchor, and he was so funny and so smart, and he just made me laugh all the time.
Are you able to talk a little bit about, you met your first husband at KENS, and he was a news executive, he eventually got into politics. So what was it like, first of all, when you're working together at the station, you're having a relationship, but yet you work within the same business, what was that like? And then what was it like as he got into politics, and you're both very much in the public eye, different fields? How did that work, the dynamic between the two of you?
Well, I think in the beginning when we met, we both, we're working 12 and 14-hour days, so we both loved the business. We're UT grads. He is 1 year older than me. He's got a great television mind, and he just, he was one of the ones who really, he was the producer of the evening newscast that I was on, who just treated me like everyone else. I wasn't a woman, wasn't a rookie, anything. These are the expectations. He was very demanding, but he was demanding of everyone, and I like that. I like working for somebody who's demanding. I expect excellence, and I love working for people who expect excellence. And then we moved to the East Coast together, and when we came back, he started thinking about politics, and initially I was really opposed to that whole idea. But, he felt it was calling, and so I supported him in that. It was, I had to be careful on the air, not to show bias. I've always tried to be fair and right down the middle. But people, of course, are going to perceive, if you have a spouse in politics, that you're going to lean that way. But anyway, I tried to be. And we would sometimes wake up, it was a good day, neither of us are in the paper.
What is it about San Antonio, or does it have to do with San Antonio? How there's been news anchors, reporters in the past that move on. Randy Beamer went to Denver. I think Fred Lozano was L.A. Chris Maru went to Boston, and you yourself, Philadelphia, make their way back, and they make San Antonio their home. Did it just happen that way for you, or was there something about the San Antonio market, the people, that you wanted to be here?
For me, and I think I can speak for Chris and for Fred. We have family here, and I was working in Philadelphia for 6 years, and after I had my daughter, I was blessed to have a job offer in New York and in Chicago, and I just thought, you know, I want to go home. I want to be part of that community. I want to have it. Because I was working a lot in those top markets when you're working for the network. And my parents, I thought, I want my children to have the same experience I had growing up, and I want them to be around family. So, and San Antonio is a great television market, and it's such a wonderful city, and the people are so wonderful. And I mean, it was, what a blessing I was able to come back and be able to spend my career here.
Can you talk about some of the challenging times, you know, raising a family, being in such a demanding career?
Well, you know, whenever there was breaking news, the kids understood, I got to go to work. I have to go to work. And my daughter was born in May, which is a ratings period for us. So her birthday parties every year were a little challenging. You know, I couldn't take off work for that, but you know, you just work around it, and they just understood that. You know, and you know, their father and their mother both had high-profile careers, and they grew up with that, and they were understanding. And there's a funny clip that somebody just found when Austin was only 2, Alicia was 6, and I was doing a live shot for the food bank, and Austin wanted the microphone. He kept grabbing the microphone, and I wouldn't give it to him, and so he looked down, he grabbed Alicia's bow and just pulled it with all his might, and but she knew not to go, ah, you know, because we were on camera. She's like, toes up. So I mean, they just adjusted.
Was there ever a time in your career that you just considered walking away from broadcasting and doing something else?
Yeah, I went through a difficult time about 10 years ago, and I thought about walking away. I had it was difficult. We had different management, and I just thought it had taken all the joy out of the job, and we had gotten very formulaic about our product on the air. In the 90s, I did a lot of religious reporting. I did a lot of stories with Archbishop Flores and then Archbishop Gomez, and we had freedom to do that, but then that was sort of taken away, and we were just really structured in what we did. And so I thought, I'm not going to do this anymore. But then we had a whole new management team come in. I told the new management team the first day they came in, this is it, you know, this is my last year. That was like more than 10 years ago. But they were so wonderful. The environment has been so wonderful there. We've hired terrific journalists that it's just been a joy.
Thank you so much for watching. We hope you join us next time for part 2 of our conversation with Deborah Knapp.